Gold speculation reaches a record low. Could this be the perfect time to start acquiring gold assets? Amir Nani, top resource entrepreneur and recipient of Casey's 10-Bagger Club, thinks so. In an environment where nearly 70% of TSX venture mining companies have a market cap of less than $5 million, Amir's new gold company, Brazil Resources, just raised $6.4 million through an oversubscribed private placement, with the biggest buyers being management, Doug Casey of Casey Capital Strategies, and legendary investor Rick Rule. BRI also just completed the acquisition of Brazilian Gold Corp, which will more than double their in-ground gold minerals. Brazil Resources seizing the opportunity.
Karen, I want to kind of move on to another topic that is really popular, and I've asked a few of our subscribers. I let them know that I would be interviewing you again, and one of the top questions for you was just to say it, the word and to leave it out there for you, and that is Bitcoin. We just wanted to get your thoughts on the digital currency. Is it something you've been looking at?
I've been looking at Bitcoin, and I'll tell you what I think about Bitcoin. I think that we've had something called the legal tender laws, which talks about what is legal tender, what is currency allowed to be. And the particular attraction of Bitcoin is that it's not illegal. It's one of the ways that you can make payment now, because we have these legal tender laws, and you're not allowed to a buyer and a seller are not allowed to agree on their own currency, regardless of whether that's an existing currency. So Bitcoin is a way of having a legal payment possibility. It's a way of giving flexibility to people on how they're going to make payments. So in that sense, it's very attractive. But I'll tell you, as a currency should be two things. It should not only be a way of making a payment, but it should be something called a store of value, which is that it maintains its value. And that's where Bitcoin is. It's not as secure as something else, like a precious metal. So I would say that in the fact that it gives us flexibility, it's good, but it's got certain drawbacks as well. And I know there are people that are very loyal to Bitcoin, and whenever I say anything critical of it, I get a lot of emails. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is not the only cryptocurrency. Yeah. It's not a store of value.
What in the end, when you look at what you just talked about for the first part of the interview, one of the things like we're seeing right now is with Russia and China doing these currency deals, which you did touch on. But I'm just kind of confused here, and if you could just help me out. So are these countries trying to destroy the dollar, or are the global elites trying to destroy the dollar, or is it? I'm just wondering if Putin is a sideshow or if Putin is the real deal when it comes to an active participant in trying to destroy the U.S. dollar.
It's the word quantitative easing. That was a term that was invented by the Fed so that what they were doing in sabotaging the dollar was going to be something that we weren't going to get alarmed at. One of the things that I've been putting up on the internet is a whole series of proof of how this has been treasonous. It has not been done by the outside. It has not been done by Putin. It has been done by the Federal Reserve deliberately, because what they wanted to force the world into a one world currency. And it was frustrated by the BRICS countries, and rightfully so. Who wants to have a world where we're being controlled by our currency? Nobody.
Okay, that's great. So now the Federal Reserve is basically essentially purposely committing suicide. How is it possible for the Fed to fail when they really do have complete control of the currency? They could print it out of existence.
Because it's paper. There's nothing backing it.
No, that's what I'm saying. Though, how come if the Fed really wants to destroy the dollar, then why don't they just do it? What are they waiting for?
That's what they're doing.
Well, how is it possible for them to fail though in destroying it?
It's not. They've done it. It's only a matter of time.
Okay. Yeah, no, so I'm totally on board. I get what you're saying, but my only concern is how is it even possible to stop the Fed from committing suicide when they literally control the keys to the kingdom when it comes to the U.S. currency?
They don't control it. When people drop the dollar, when all of the countries drop the dollar, it's no longer going to be the reserve, the international reserve currency. I think you're giving it a lot more strength than it possesses. It's on its last dying legs.
Yes, but I'm just saying though you're saying the Fed wants to destroy the dollar.
Yes.
What I'm saying is I don't see how anyone could stop them from destroying the dollar. So
because we switch to something else. There's dollars issued by the Treasury that are in the global debt facility. They've been printed. They have to be cut and issued in replacement for the Federal Reserve note. We just exchange them.
okay,
That's
so
very simple.
essentially the Treasury Department of the United States takes over the job that it's supposed to rightfully have, which is in charge of the currency. Which actually, on a side note, and this is totally out of the blue, but I've always been curious, and no one's been able to answer it. And I'm totally might be catching off guard on this one. But the Treasury issues our coins, and our coins are not Federal Reserve notes. Have you ever considered why doesn't the Federal Reserve issue our coins? Why does because that is money when the Treasury uses coins that are made of metal. What is the difference? Why does the Treasury issue coins? Because that is money.
I think it's because of the Constitution. The Fed should never, ever have been given the right to issue paper currency. And if you read the Constitution, it says to coin money. It may be that they thought that if they went that one last step, everybody would realize how unconstitutional the Fed is. That was one of the discussions that I had in the American Bar Association Journal. They wanted me to show how the Federal Reserve was unconstitutional. I did, but it's not quite as obvious.
Okay, so elected officials, they will eventually see, and you are showing them that the Federal Reserve is the enemy. It is essentially going to destroy the United States and bring us into a one world currency.
That's what they want to do, but the fact of the matter is that all of the rest of the world are giving us a hand up. They want to help us get rid of the Fed. So they together with us are going to get rid of, it's not just the Fed, it's the Bank for International Settlements and all of the central banks that are in printing the currency of the other countries. And that's all one group, by the way. There's this study of the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland, which showed that this is all because they have the same directors on the boards of these companies. They're all one interlocking conglomerate.
So ultimately, Karen, in the next 5 years, 10 years, where are we going if the good guys win? Where are we going if the bad guys win? Bad guys being the elites.
Okay. Where we're going if the good guys win, and the chance that happens is 90 to 95%. Where we're going is exactly where we decide we want to go, in open transparency. And a lot of people say when we're talking about this gold currency, it's not one world currency. Every single country has its own currency. And in addition to the gold, we're going to have local currencies. This is the best way to end unemployment. That's where all of the local companies get together and agree on a currency, and then there are ways of organizing that. There's an economist named Silvio Gesell, Gesell. He lived in Argentina, but he was, I believe he was Hungarian. Anyway, his idea is that in the local currency, after a certain period of time, you have that bill reduced in value, so that makes the currency circulate. and it's just it's going to be a wonderful. It's going to be a world where we're going to be able to fix it the way we want to, and it's not going to be people talk about globalization. It's going to be localized in many, many ways. We're not going to have this terrible cartel telling us lies instead of what the news actually is. We're going to have to do a lot of retrofitting. We're going to have to try to figure out how we've been bamboozled and how to fix it so it doesn't continue happening. We're going to have a lot of work, but how things are going to be, they're going to be the way we want them to be. That's how they're going to be.
I pray to God you're right, because I'm not as optimistic as you. So if the Goldman Sachs, JP Morgans, and Bank of International Settlements, if this side continues to control, and I mean the masses are in so much debt and so ignorant, that's why I'm not as optimistic. But
okay, let me tell you where the debt really is.
Okay.
It's not with the masses. It's with the banking cartel, this global debt facility. There is, when the gold was being collected, there were bonds that were issued, denominated in gold. There were in the 1930s, $210 trillion worth of bonds that had interest of 4% payable in gold. This has been compounding. It's now in the quadrillion. So this banking cartel owes us much more money than we owe them. Yeah?
That's an interesting.
They've got his paper. What we have in this global debt facility, that's gold. Mm-hmm. And my job, I've been appointed by 188 ministers of finance. My job is to certify who is the authorized signatory. And that's when I do that, I look to see whether this is benefiting humanity or not.
Yeah.
So, I mean, humanity is very rich. It's not the banking cartel that's rich. They've been bamboozling us and tricking us into accepting paper instead of real currency.
Yeah, no, and that's the problem. Everybody has been conditioned into believing that the banks issue our money, and what they are issuing is money in the minds of billions, and that's what we're up against.
When you say we're up against it, I just find that when you're very clear about what you understand, you can convey just what a scam it is, and the scam does end. And what I find also very helpful is if you look at the Wizard of Oz, which Frank Baum wrote with the banking cartel in mind, and you look at that moment where Toto the dog is pulling back the curtain, and the wizard is telling Dorothy and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion to look at the screen, the projection screen. Mm-hmm. The projection screen is the media. They want us to be fooled into thinking that what we're hearing from the mainstream media, and also some of the alternative media, they want us to think that that's reality. But if you're very clear about what's actually going on, it's not that hard to get people to understand, really.
No, now a big concern, and again, I'm sorry to be a pessimist, but for everyone who's rich and for everyone in power, the system of fraud is working out great for them. So I'm just thinking, what will they do to defend it? You talked about a nuke almost going off in the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, this seems like a pretty powerful group that's not going to go away easily with just some exposure that they're bad.
They're not going to go away easily, but just think about what's happening differently. Syria, we were told that there was sarin gas and that there ought to be bombing going on Syria. And when the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations tried to vote to authorize that, people were showing how much campaign contributions they were getting and how the vote was going. And they were just exposed in a way that they had never been exposed before. And it was in the UK Parliament that they refused to authorize the bombing. So things are happening differently. Now, the UK Parliament is very, very important because that is the group where this power transition model started predicting that we were going to have rule of law. I got my statement up on the UK Parliament website 3 times. Elaine Colville, another World Bank whistleblower, got her statement up. There are a number of members of Parliament now that are asking the controller of the Exchequer. I guess this is going back to your first question, is who are the actual officials involved and what are they saying? So the controller of the Exchequer was asked whether there really is gold in the global debt facility. And he said, have Karen ask the Secretary of the Treasury. So we went back to the controller of the Exchequer and we said, no, there are 2 countries in the Commonwealth that are asking about converting their currency into this gold, the aurum that I'm talking about, where you have the thin gold between the plastic. I said, so that's really a question for the controller of the Exchequer. So we went back to the UK Parliament, and then there's another member of Parliament in the UK. I think his name is Lefroy. He is the chair of something called the Parliamentary Network on the World Bank. We're asking him to get involved so that we can take back our world, is what we need to do. And of course, the members of Parliament are looking around, just like you're saying. They're trying to see whether they're going to be exposed or whether the banking cartel is going to come up with campaign financing for their opponent. They're trying to figure out which way is this going to go. And that's where the power transition model is really quite telling. We know exactly which way it's going to go.
Karen, I've taken up so much of your time. Can I ask you one more question? We'll wrap it up in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Your analysis, your credibility, your documentation, your position as a former World Bank, everyone loves it because when they see somebody like you out there championing humanity, essentially, everyone's, especially in the alternative media, people who are looking for the truth, are very pleased to see that somebody's exposing the corruption with high level of credibility. Now, I want to address the one thing where I know people have probably told you, hey, can you just not talk about this? But I want to talk about it because I want to understand your own discovery and your own, I don't want to say conversion, but your own acceptance and belief. And that is, the last interview we talked about something that even caught me off guard, which was these people with large skulls. I don't know if you're referring to Nephilim or another phrase or another name for them, but I just kind of want to ask you, when was the first time you had heard about this type of species, and what was it that made you say it's real?
I'm trying to remember the exact date, but it was following a movie production. And this was because how to convince. I don't jump to conclusions, and I ask everybody else to do their own due diligence. And I have taken a lot of flack and heat, including some very critical YouTube that said that I obviously had taken leave of my senses by accepting something which was so completely implausible. Mm-hmm. But it's a Dr. Ed Spencer who had told me about them. He is a neurologist from Yale Medical School who studied at Stanford. And he gave me some pretty good proof. And since then, we've received a lot of emails from people who have been eyewitnesses. I spoke with a lawyer who I've known for 30 years. He was the lawyer who told me to go to the credit rating agencies. And I'd expected him to be very skeptical. And he told me no, that he knew, and he himself had seen these Homo capensis, and that many of them went to BDSM hangouts because they like to beat women. So, but there is physical evidence all over this planet with their skulls that have been buried, their civilizations, the ruins of their civilizations after the water level of water in the sea. But the point, the thing I'd like to say, Daniel, is that the information that I'm giving on the financial sector is freestanding. It has it's valid whether or not you want to believe in the existence of this second species of hominid.
No, I totally.
It should not be used to impeach me. If people want to say that I'm gullible, and don't want to accept the things that I thought was proof, but there's been DNA analysis now on these cells. And it shows that this is a second species. It's not Homo sapiens.
Okay. Why is this second species essentially absent from the public's eye? I know. You're saying that there is evidence out there, but why isn't the species open? Why isn't it like any other species? Why isn't it open and available for people to interact with?
They're hiding from us. There's more than one kind of Homo capensis. There's the one that has it's called a parietal plate. Your skull. Homo sapiens have two, and one species, the one that has the biggest brain, and you can also look at the pharaohs. They were this larger Homo capensis. Some people call them big brains. Some people call them coneheads. Akhenaten was, and his wife Nefertiti, and you can see pictures of them holding their children.
Are they superior to Homo sapiens?
Are they superior? No. That's why we've won.
Okay. You had mentioned last time we had spoken about the Jesuits. It was something that I had never heard of at the time. I just wanted to know in the mix of things so people can better understand this group of people. How much control and how much are they involved in on the cartel side?
That's what the cartel is for. It's for siphoning the money into that group. They're the owners.
That is the source, then. That is the master.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no. The Jesuits are not the master. They're, you've also got these secret societies. It's like, think of an onion and different layers of the onion.
Yeah.
They're all part of the layers. And then at the very core of this onion, that's where the Homo capensis sit.
Yeah, it's so hard because there's so many rabbit holes we could go down. I've taken up so much of your... Karen, if you don't mind, I'd love to, after we get feedback from this show, I'd love to have you back on maybe in about a month or two.
Okay, that'd be great.
Karen, thank you so much. If someone would like to reach out to you or follow your work or see the documentation that you discussed on this show, where's the best place for them to go?
Go to my website, www.kahudes.net. Now, I've got the financial stuff there. I'm not, my specialty is not this second species or the Jesuits.
Yeah.
You'll have to Google there. But anyway, I've got a contact page. I can steer you to where you can find some answers.
Karen, thanks again. Again, Karen is a former senior council member of the World Bank. This is a very credible individual trying to give you information about massive, massive fraud that is literally all around us. It's so much all around us and ingrained in us that it's normal to most of us. Our whole lives we've lived in a world of fraud. Karen, you have a great day, and thank you so much again for your time.
Thanks for having me on, Daniel.